You tell me to forget that my grandmother was born right there, so alright, I say I shall go. You tell me to forget, it is there I want my own children to grow. Alright, I say I shall go. But I hope you understand how I feel about Emerton, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. And I hope you know it's true that I would never forgive you, because look what you do to my Emerton. You tell me to forget that you bring bulldozers and push down the houses, so alright, I say I shall go. You tell me to forget, you bring bulldozers and push down the houses, oh, alright, I say I shall go. But I hope you understand how I feel about Emerton, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. And I hope you know it's true that I will never forgive you, because look what you do to my Emerton.
Ay, sakit.
You tell me to forget that you uproot my people and scatter them to and fro. Alright, I say I shall go. Oh, you tell me to forget that you did the wrong things and then let my children know. Alright, I say I shall go. But I hope you understand how I feel about Emerton, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. And I hope you know it's true that I would never, 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 never forgive you, because look what you do to my Emerton. You tell me to forget and that my grandmother was born right there, so alright, I say I shall go. 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 Alright, alright, I say I shall go. You tell me to forget, you bring bulldozers and push down the houses, oh, alright, I say I shall go. But I hope you understand how I feel about Everton, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. And I hope you know it's true that I will never forgive you, because look how you do to my Emerton.
Ay, sakay.
You tell me to forget, that you uproot my people and scatter them to and fro. All right, I say I shall go. Oh, you tell me to forget that you did the wrong things and then let my children know. All right, I say I shall go. But I hope you understand how I feel about Everton, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. And I hope you know it's true that I would never, 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 never forgive you, because look what you do to my Everton. You tell me to forget, and that my grandmother was born right there, so all right, I say I shall go. 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 All right, I say I shall go.
Good evening. Emerton by the mighty Gabby, the cultural ambassador of Barbados, one of the legends of the art form. Long before there was Caneville in Mocha, Arcadia, there was Emerton in Barbados. And sometimes we Guyanese, we get so caught up in our politics that we don't realize that there are similarities to our experience around the world. Emerton talking there, the mighty Gabi, about the phenomenon of governments coming in and tearing down buildings for development. We are hearing of the Harbor Bridge, which is going to be commissioned in a couple of days. And those of us who have been sleeping and not paying attention to what's going on will suddenly say, wow, Harbor Bridge, development, and not remember how many poor people's homes have been swallowed up in that development. The mighty Gabi said, I will never forget. I will never forget. My grandmother was born there. I will never forget. Remember Sister Vashti? Her ancestral piece of land was swallowed up by the harbor bridge. Development is good, but when development interferes with the rhythm of the lives of poor people, ordinary people, it's not development. It's not development. We've been tireless on this program in trying to put in context some terms that have been thrown around here. Racist, for example. We seem to be rescuing the nation from the misapplication of the meaning of that term. All you have to do is to say Africans are discriminated, you are racist. Amerindians are discriminated, you are a racist. I love being African, you're racist. And that ignorance was filtering down to a nation. We know a lot of East Indian brothers and sisters throw that word around. Even some Africans throw it around. And as you would have noticed, as we've been said, 2 young people decided that they wanted to talk to me about race and racism. I was skeptical, but I went and I did the interview. The rest is history. The rest is history. Young people are now enrolling for my first course on Pan-Africanism. I shared with you some of their thoughts. They now recognize that what they thought was racism is not racism. Unintended consequences. Oh boy. Good evening to all of you and welcome. GHK Lall is here tonight. You all have been asking for him. Henry Jeffrey was here last night and he was insightful as always, and GHK Lall is going to be here tonight. Good evening to my friend Scotia, who I was hanging out with today with some other friends, and Scotia said, bye GHK Lall is me, bye Twilly. And I said, well, I get in GHK Lall tonight. And so Scotia, GHK is on tonight. Oh boy. The sociology of. All right, I will share the number for the class. I will share the number for the class where you can call and enroll for our class. We're looking to start on November 17th or thereabout. Good evening to all of you. We are still trying to make sense of what happened on September 1st and the results that ensued from the vote there. I must commend the 2 independent newspapers, Stabrook News and Kaichor News, because they have been putting before us the numbers, and they've been doing some analysis of the numbers. And we have been realizing that what is or what we thought was is not really so. We have said, for example, and they're going crazy on the PPP side. And I've said 2 things on this program that I want to sink in to the consciousness, the collective consciousness, that the PPP got 9,000 or thereabout more votes than they got at the last election. And that is about 1 seat. They ended up with 3 seats extra, although they only got the equivalent of 1 seat, which means that the PPP's numbers have gone up largely because of low voter turnout in the opposition. The PPP lost votes in Region 2, Region 3, and Region 6, sorry. There are 3 traditional areas of comfort. They actually lost votes in those 3 regions. The PPP told us that there was going to be a red wave, and 2/3 majority they were talking about, and that Africans were going to vote in numbers for them. Donald Ramatar said, well, the PPP beat Bush and win catch the board. Total rejection of half of the populace, half of the electorate, total rejection of the PPP. Well, total rejection. The other thing that I want to sink in our consciousness, our collective consciousness, is that we've been talking about how many votes the APNU lost, and they lost quite a bit. They lost between 80 to 90,000 votes to win. And they had about 60,000 people who voted for them the last time stayed home. But what is being silenced is that 77,000 people voted for the APNU, not 7,700, 77,000. And people are trying to silence those votes. Because the narrative is that the APNU has been blown away and the PNC is about to die, and Black people have just torn up their entire history, and they've rejected Norton and David Hines, and David Hines should not go to Parliament, and Norton should resign, and blah, 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 blah. 77,000. But sometimes you have to silence the truth to advance your narrative, where you're not going to silence it when I'm wrong. Because those 77,000 are real people. And finally, before I bring GHK Lall in, at the last election in Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM, the party that Afro-Trinidadians normally would vote for, they got 101,000 less vote than they got at the election before. They lost 101,000. They lost 101,000. You see, we get caught up sometimes in our politics and we don't realize what's happening. There, the UNC was able, again, like the PPP, to inflate their vote. They basically got, I think, about 14,000 more votes, but less than that, about 11,000 more votes than they got the last time. And they ended up with about 3 or 4 more seats. Same thing in Guyana. 101,000 Afro-Trinidadians stayed away. There was not a third party, there was not a win there. They stayed away from the polls. Here 140,000 less the APNU got. About 75 to 80,000 voted for win. Another 50, 60,000 stayed away. you look at the two elections and you see something. And in Trinidad, they've done their analysis. And they've come to the conclusion that Afro-Trinidadians rebuke their party. They did it by staying home. In Guyana, they rebuked, but there was a third party that some of the rebukers went over to. So when we talk about change in voting patterns, ethnic voting patterns, you look and you see 98% of one ethnic group vote for the party that they have traditionally, they haven't shifted, and yet we're talking about change in ethnic voting patterns. First of all, a pattern means that something happened 3-4 times. Second, when you're talking about change in ethnic voting patterns, you're talking about when the two ethnic groups or the three ethnic groups are simultaneously moving away from their parties. Then you're beginning to talk about change in ethnic voting patterns. What we basically saw with Africans is that they share their votes three-way. 1/3 to the APNU, 1/3 to win, 1/3 stay home. That's not changing ethnic voting patterns. To change your ethnic voting patterns, it means that a critical mass of Africans have to move to the traditional Indian party, and at the same time, Indians from the traditional Indian party move to the traditional African party. That's the definition of change of ethnic voting patterns. Other than that, you're talking nonsense. And I'm not asking anybody that. It's a phenomenon that I studied. You have never, in all the ethnic societies that I've studied, and you have about 200 of them, there's never been what we are talking about ethnic voting patterns. And so a lot of those societies have had to accept that you ain't gonna get no change in ethnic voting patterns. And so you have to come up with constitutional mechanism to accept that people ain't changing and going away. Look at Suriname. Look at Trinidad and Tobago. Look at Switzerland. And we can go on and on and on. We in Guyana, especially our elites, we create a narrative, and then everything has to fit in that narrative. Jadeo cussed me because I said that the APNU should secure its base first. And don't worry with Rafidev and his crossover nonsense. And Jadeo said, oh, David Hines is a racist. And when the election, they said there's political scientists, don't they know that the first thing you do in an ethnic society is that you secure your base? Jadeo is laughing. Now he condemned me for it, but he's laughing. The point is that no media person said, but Mr. Jadeo, you'd condemn David Hines and call you racist because he said the same thing. That's it. Jadeo gets a pass in this society, and I as an African don't get a pass. Me and he go to school together. We're about the same age, right? But he cuss up every Thursday, and the journalists sit there, they ignore the cuss and they report the news. If I cuss, they report the cuss and ignore my news. There is a different standard for African elites in this country and from Indian elites and other elites. That is the kernel of racism. It's not that somebody sit down and say, I will favor the Indian before favor. There's something called slavery, out of which came racism. And unless you can heal the wounds of slavery, unless we can come to terms with what slavery has done to our society, we are not going to recognize that we treat Black people different from we treat other people, and we just take it for granted. Jack Dio cuss up Azadin. He dunce. He can't read and write. And nobody said Mr. Jack Dio is cussing up Indians. I call a couple of black people who left and went over to the PPP and overcompensate, tacking down black people. And what's the headline? David Hines insults African Guyanese. I ain't talking about more than 10 of them, you know. Me and Jack Dio do the same thing. But what we do is that Jack Dio gets a pass. And I am alerting this society to what it does every single day. Some of it, a small percentage of the people are conscious that they're doing it. The vast majority of people are not conscious. It's called unconscious racism. And it's not just Indian people who do it or Amerindian people. African elites do it too. And they're messing up this society. And so I'm glad that at least some of the young people have come to their senses and realize a man who fighting racism from the cradle can be a racist. When you're fighting racism, how are you going to be a racist fighting racism? Every day before I wake up, I am fighting racism before I wake up. And I'm glad the society is coming to a sense. All right. That was my little pep talk. We're ready to roll. GHK Lall is here. And of course, GHK is not responsible for anything that I've said. But, you know, GHK has its own thoughts. Mr. Lall, good evening.
Good evening to you. Good evening, everyone.
It's been now about 4 weeks, and I know that you have been digging into the complexities of these last elections, and your latest column, the one that I read about a day or two ago, questioned the voter turnout that they said was so low. But if you have a bloated list and you are measuring those who voted against a bloated list, it's going to look like it's a low turnout. But in effect, the turnout was normal. And I think we have to break it down, because if we allow the PPP and others to have their way, they will tell us that this election was what it wasn't. But let's start with your general thoughts. Were you surprised at the overall outcome of the elections? And I'm asking this question very conscious that systemically the elections were not fair. They might have been free, but they were not fair. And I am not referring here to what the opposition said. I'm referring here to what the observers, who the PPP like to cite, that, we win because the observers say we win. But in this instance, the observers have said some other things, which you don't hear them repeating. But my question, were you surprised at the outcome, the overall outcome of the elections?
I was. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. And I wasn't surprised at the outcome of the elections. And I'll tell you why. I believe that the elections were over before the first vote was cast, because we saw some of that in evidence. We saw those buses coming in. We saw the pre-arrangements lined up with senior police officers. And I asked myself, those were caught on camera. How many more were they? How many of those were there? How many Venezuelans were there? And so I was surprised that the Win Group got so many seats, so many votes. That was a surprise to me because I thought it was good for two or three and maybe six or seven as things heated up. And I said, look, it's gaining some traction and it's good for six or seven maximum. But I was not going anywhere in the vicinity of double digits. In terms of the PNC, I really thought that it was going to do not as well as the last time, but it was going to do better than where it did. And I heard you speaking before you talk about international observers about rebuke, and there was some of that, and I sensed some of that coming. And I feel, frankly, and I must say it, I don't know how much you did, but certainly your energy percolates here. But I felt that the opposition spent too long wrangling over to coalesce or not to coalesce, and that turned a lot of its own people off. That was one. A lot of precious time was lost. And so it only has itself to blame. So by the time it really got started, I don't think the heart of the people were with the opposition as such. In the meantime, you had this new fella on the block, Mr. Mohammed, going about, and people want to hear him. I think that the efforts of the opposition could have been much more. So there was a combination of factors. The PPP had all the money, the resources. The international observers spoke about advantage of incumbency and on even playing field. Now, three words and then two words. They may look simple, they may look sophisticated, but they encompass so much more. That when you can use state resources and you can block opposition faces and voices from state media, and state media in turn is used to beat people from the opposition camps, to thrash them, then that's more than enough to register in the minds of simple people, because that message is being pounded and pounded and pounded, and there's no voice to counteract that. To stay with the international observers, you're right. And I haven't heard this being broadcast a lot. They've said it was free. Well, how can it be free when those people were chucked out of that bus in the interior, going to a rally? How can it be free given what happened to Bellevue and Lima Sands and wherever else? Now, that's a battle for Mr. Mohammed to fight. But we talk about free and we talk about fair. They've said that the process was peaceful and we can all agree on that. And it was smooth and we can all agree on that. I do. But nobody, and I want you to correct me, Dr. Hines, or anybody, nobody has said from the international community or the embassy's resident here, the ambassador's resident here, that the process was credible. Have you heard that word, sir?
No,
Good.
Absolutely not.
So I thought I may be wrong, or I missed, I didn't hear. Credible is not part of the preliminary reports, preliminary statements coming out of that. So a month later, we have the elections over, and I think it was done before it started, like I said a minute ago. And that has to mean something. That after 5 years, fully in charge of the purse strings, and all you can get is 9,000 votes, after you subsidized, gasoline and haulage, freight, and electricity and water, and you've made a big speech about that, and those things were done, you got 9,000 votes in 5 years, which is 1,800 a year. You talked about crossover. The crossover shows me how flexible Black Guyanese are in terms of the exercise of their precious franchise, the casting of that ballot, that they can go from the PNC to a win, a brand new face. Uh, Indigenous people showed that they are also thinking. They recognize their environment, they understand and agonize over their reality, and they moved to win. Win capitalize on voter discontent and voter disillusionment. But, but, here's the key here now, crossover and securing base, which we'll come to in a minute. Crossover, where are the Indian crossover votes? You talked about change in voting pattern. I am saying, where's that bulk, that groundswell of Indian crossover votes? You can't cross over. It's been in unidirectional from the PNC to the PP to win, and a few from the PNC to the PPP. Now, so that's where I am with this. And I think if you're talking about low voter turnout in terms of what? The base? The voters list? The voters list is what we have. We have no census. But if you use the census figures, the line in the 2025 budget that was presented by Dr. Ashley Singh, there's a number there of population estimate that spoke to 790,800 Guyanese. And you've got 757,000 eligible voters. And we've got 200,000 school children in this country. Now, if you're talking in terms of 442, I think thereabouts, 442,000 votes versus 757, yes. If you're talking in terms of prior elections, and that's where I say we have stuck to that, going back to, I think I went back as far as 2011. You go to that 69 to 72% range that really hasn't changed. It's just that people shifted around. Black people went to a new face, and the indigenous people went to a new face. And so that's how I put this in a nutshell. So how much has changed? PPP is still there. Now it's got 7 seats, and Win is there. 1 month after, and I think you may have missed this from today, 1 month after the inaugural address, 3 weeks after the election results, why are we talking about running out the clock and maximizing the date that is constitutionally allowed, that 4-month period, to November 2nd or 3rd? Parliament was dissolved, I think, on July 3rd, Thursday, July 3rd. So 4 months from then will take us to November 2nd, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. We've got a 30-day month in there. Now, you would want Parliament to get going. You would want Parliament to see what has changed about you as the government. You would want your new cabinet to get its feet wet. And the opposition also should be anxious that Parliament has not been called. So we've got an election. We've got an election result. We have more or less gone along. Notice my choice of words. Gone along with the election result. And we said, let's move on. It seems that we are moving on. But we're moving on in place because some things have not changed. I think Dr. Jagdev, from what I heard, he's not doing as many Thursday afternoon karaoke's, and the president is well, he sings a different genre of music. So the president is almost he's into everything. But this is where we are, and I think the opportunity is here now for the PNC to look at where it's at. I have a lot of regard for Dr. Campbell. I have a lot of regard for you and some of the team. I think you've got to start campaigning now. You've got to start winning hearts from now. It's not in 2029. It's in 2025 October. You should have started campaigning already, because the battle begins, and really so much is at stake, and so many expectations are. If the opposition can persuade the people that, look, we made some mistakes before, admit to them, but we are coming on strong now, and we'll be strong and we'll be better. I think there's some hope here.
GHK, and thanks for that overview. Let me try to get you into some sociology here. And you talk about African Guyanese and indigenous Guyanese being very liberal in terms of spreading their votes around. We talk about WIN and the APNU, but PPP got a few. Forward Guyana Movement got a few. AFC got a few. Sister Brooms got a few. And our Indian Guyanese comrades tend, by and large, to stick with the PPP. Why do you figure? I don't want to get into the whole thing about essentializing groups, because I have spent my life fighting against that. But clearly in the circumstances, there is different behavior when it came to the election. What do you think is the difference there?
The difference is the fear that the PPP is able to instill in its people. When it calls David Hinds a racist, what is the objective there? What is the objective? And I think I need to get there. Now, you and I haven't spoken about this. We haven't said a word about this. But it needs to be on the table. And people may say, they may rock back and say, well, why are we bringing that up now? But we have swept a virus, what is virulent in this society, under the carpet. Nothing resolves itself. It festers there, develops mites, gets a bump, we stomp, we toe, and then we tumble until the next election. Then we say, oh, it's only at election times that the racial parties come out. We're fooling ourselves. The other thing, you take the racism and you sweep it and sweep it. Let's go Creole here, what everybody understands. And you park up that pile of dust by the door, far away out of sight, and you leave it there. And it gets stirred and it's blown up and it scatters and gets in your nose and your eye. And that's what we have to deal with. And so when they say that David Hinds is a racist, the objectives are one, to put you in a box, pin you down, nail you down, and then hang you up. You become that feared, you, the David Hinds of this world, become that feared black spirit that mustn't be allowed anywhere near to power. The second objective is to reinforce in their people that you got to stick to we. As the man says, secure your base. So when that is taught from the cradle up, 50, 60 years ago, and it continues this to this day in a different language, verbiage, then there's some depth there. It goes deep down. And that goes to what really do we want for this country, and how much do we see in a David Hinds that the first word out of his mouth, oh, he's a racist. How is he a racist? Why is he a racist? How do you arrive at that? Why do you arrive at that conclusion? And I think the PPP has been very good at painting you and people like you in that corner. If they can't make you into a shady operator or a sexual predator, or a traitor, they make you into a racist. It's the last bastion of scoundrels, and we've got plenty of them there. When everybody forget that David Hines, 40, 50 years ago, and other black Guyanese alongside Indian Guyanese stood up against an entrenched black government, a superstar black leader, not no ordinary black man, and said, no, this thing wrong. It was for all Guyanese and Guyana. That part of the narrative when David Hine was a friend and an ally and a brother, dying there in the book no more. That ain't coming out of anybody's mouth. It's come out from people like me mouth. Right? Now here's this. You were fighting for all Guyanese then. And I tip my hat to you and the others. But the arithmetic of our demographics had to be very, very close into your minds that ultimately the biggest beneficiary of David Hines's agitation against a black government that was lauded would be Indo-Guyanese. Today, when David Hines do the same thing for all Guyanese, with his depressed, distressed, and disillusioned black brothers in mind, primarily, and left out indigenous Guyanese, and left behind poor Indo-Guyanese, he's a racist. All we see, all that is said, he's a racist. And that message, Dr. Hines, my brother, is instilled, and it sticks. And it sticks. So it's not that the Indians are lesser people. It's not that they are less flexible. But when a message is, we go back to Goebbels, a message is repeated over and over again, it becomes truth. It becomes established truth in the minds of the listeners. And whether it's the bottom house, or Babu Jan, or Kitty, or wherever, that was what took place. When you said don't split the vote, I think it was you and Dr. Jeffrey, oh, there's your version of Apanjat. But when the other man says secure the base, and we need 55,000 votes in Region 6, a place that got 61,111 registered eligible voters. Oh, it's politics. How is that politics? When a man could say that Coffee was a proud house slave, how is that politics? Thank God he gave an apology, and I commend him for that. What is it, Dr. Hines, that Indian people see me, not just you, me as a renegade Indian, and Anand Prasad, the editor-in-chief of Stabrook News, and Glenn Lall, the publisher of Kaichor News, and Anand Gulsaran and Chris Ram, and let me go up on the ladies' side now, Nazima Raghobir, Press Association, Davina Bhagat, journalist, and Melinda Janki, attorney. Why? Because we are Indians who have gone against the grain, and that is dangerous. And we are dangerous because of that. And those messages are short and swift and sweet, and they stick. In the meantime, although a Moses Nagamutu is called a Chamar and a Dalit and whatever else, in the bitterness of his freedom to make a decision, Ganesh Mahipal is pilloried, Gita Chandan is embraced, and that is what is going on here. Let's go to the other side of the coin. Who get the dirty work for do in the PPP? Who get promoted to minister? Who get the dirty work today? Today, the low-class work, the untouchable work. Is it not the black Guyanese, some of them, that have decided the pasture is greener over there in PPP camp? Look at it and examine it. And you tell me that these people calling David Hines a racist, these people are going to raise their hand and voice against somebody like me or those names I call. They can't hold a candle to truth. And these things are what inspire first of all, it unsettles them, it agitates them, it disturbs them, and it steers them. It steers them to stay. By better we stay in the tribe and keep them black man out. Isn't that the objective? Isn't that the message? Is that old hat? How old is it? Secure the base. Secure the base. 55,000 out of 61. What are you telling people there? And so those messages resonate. They resonate, and they are provocative, and they compel, because people are fearful. People are fearful. And that is known and it is capitalized upon. So that is why I am saying to you that when the machinery goes into gear, this is the result you get. People stick to what they believe is safe. They know it might be wrong. They see all the corruption. They see all the inconsistencies. They see all the wrongdoing, but they say, you know what? It's me own. Whereas David Hinds was a freedom fighter 40, 50 years ago. Today he's a terrorist. Today he's a racist. I mean, this is how the page has been flipped. And the ones who are really camouflage racists or closet racists, they get a pass. So you're right, it's two different standards. But the question still remains, why is it that Indians are where they are? It's because of all these things that flood their consciousness, overwhelms them. We're talking about the mass of voters, and I'm talking to you now as a political science. These are simple people, ordinary people. They're not big analysts. They're not big sociologists or economists or anything like that. These are ordinary people with their needs and their family and their short-term visions. It's individual. It's not national. It's what is in it for me and who I know they got their flaws, but I might as well take my chance and stick with them because I know what the other man will do. And that is why I think the Indian voters stick to where they are. Look, I ain't dealing in theory and ideology. I ain't got no patience with that. I am dealing with reality. And this is what the reality on the ground is.
The reality on the ground, Mr. GHK Lall here tonight, following up on last night with Dr. Jeffrey, really, as we would say in the country, deep analysis of what is taking place around us. Some of you are inquiring about the comment on the screen there. One of my girls, I found out, certainly in Buxton, I have plenty girls, political girlfriends, people who, since we were growing up, saw something to encourage me to do, and they've been very, very faithful. And I'm finding out that across the country that there are others, the young lady who came to see our family next door to me, and she's telling them that our favorite political person is a man from Buxton named Dr.David. I said she hugged me at the rally and so on, and she's always there in front when I'm speaking. And they said, "But you live over there, over the paling." They called me out, and we chatted for about 5 minutes, cross the paling, as we would say in the country. And of course, the sister here is referring to one of those loyal supporters, Sister Annie. We call her Annie Bob James here in Buxton, who is APNU, David Hinds, and so on. And just a couple of days ago, I passed, and she yelled out to me that I got come and explain to she what going on. I said, I pass him back. Never got a chance to pass back, and I think on Saturday night I passed there and I hollered for she, but apparently she was not at home. Last night at about 11:30, I was sitting with my son and a couple of other friends. Somebody called to say Annie just dropped down and dead, as we would say in the village. Really shocked the entire community. You talk about energy, you talk about commitment. It was Annie to to her family and to the community of Buxton, our condolences. I'm still trying to come to grips with it. You know, sometimes people die and you say, well, yeah, they were sick and so on. This wasn't a sick person. She just went to a funeral yesterday, going home from the funeral, and that's it. That's it. The lesson here is, let's do what we have to do today. Don't put it off tomorrow. Don't put it off tomorrow. So my condolences to the village, to the family, and to the APNU family, because she was, oh my God, you're talking about commitment, really committed. She told me before the election, hey, you really, me I want fear nothing. I is the first body on that me polling station. And I'm reliably informed that she was the first body who went to the polling station. She came in that tradition of Buxton woman, village woman, feisty. She ain't taking nonsense from man. She ain't taking nonsense from nobody. And so she was really a phenomenon in this village that is accustomed to phenomena. And as I said, we're coming to grips with it as a community. Coming to grips with it as a community. What good, Annie, with the ancestors. I'm sure that they have a lot of work for you, and you are going to give an account of yourself there that is greater than the account you give her of yourself here. People who are not doctors, they're not lawyers, they're not leaders in the sense of they're out there on the stage. But without them in our Guyana, in our communities are poor. Brother GHK, let's talk about some of the developments. You touched on the issue of the Parliament, the National Assembly, not being summoned. And it's now 4 weeks after the election and change. The larger issue here is that it is the president who's the head of the executive branch who has the authority under the Constitution to convene a co-equal branch of government. And if we go further, whenever Parliament meets, it's at the whims and fancy of the ruling party, the government. And we have this situation where members of the executive branch sit in the legislative branch. And the legislative branch is supposed to serve as an oversight of the executive branch. Yet we're going to have 22 members of cabinet who are going to be sitting in the legislative branch. Here is the president holding up the work of a pivotal branch of government, the lawmaking body, hiding under the Constitution. Have we reached the point where we should be doing as the Americans do, which is to go in the direction of strict separation of powers, where each branch of government has its sphere, where our legislative branch does not have to wait on the president, that if we had a statutory arrangement where we say 1 week after the declaration of the results, Parliament should meet and it doesn't have to wait on the president to call it. That's what I'm talking about. Have we reached the point where we should move in the direction that the Americans have gone, with strict separation of powers and checks and balances?
The short answer is one word: Absolutely. Another short answer, also one word, is yes. I mean, you use the word, and rightly so, parliament as co equal to the executive. What we've got is parliament as an extension and a duplication of the executive, if I may say so. And look, clearly, we have seen some of in the past, just using 2025 to 25. And we've seen some of the things. The one that sticks out to me is the Public Accounts Committee. I mean, you use the one seat majority, you use your edge, your advantage, and you change the quorum and the rules there, and then nobody turns up. Or people, so unless you got people there. So you just neutralized, you banish, you vanquish the Public Accounts Committee. It's at your whim and fancy. And so we've we have a situation where the speaker, the honorable speaker, sometimes I want, yes, it's the part of the plum of the victor, but I mean, not a motion can pass, my brother. No motion on anything. I mean, even the one with the young lady at Tushen, Tushen, Adriana Young, somebody had to prevail upon a parliamentary officer that, hey, this thing we should have this, what was it, moment of silence?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, how depraved have we become that needs consideration? So, yes, let me go further now. The American system of the separation of powers has done wonders for it. And we see when the same part, I had some problems with different parties, one in the executive and one in the House of Representatives and another in the Senate. But we see what is going on in Washington right now, in the White House, and in the US Congress. And it, it's a runaway. It's a massacre because everybody is in lockstep. And I hate to say this, including the Supreme Court, with the dictates that are coming down. Yes, the lower courts might hold up and be that check and balance that we need, but because the groundwork has been laid, but notwithstanding what is happening now, as Ted Cruz said, and Rand Paul in a different language and others, there'll be a time when the coin will be flipped. And then we in the Republican Party will have to deal with what we are dishing out now. Now, I really believe in a society, in a country that is so divided as Guyana. We need the check and balance of the executive being as it is, and that American system, the parliamentary system, the legislative system, being a body altogether that makes up its own mind and speaks its own mind. Yes, it will have some relationship with the executive, but then individual members have that freedom to think on their own, vote their conscience, and decide on the issues and vote their conscience. I think it's not that we need it. We we are 20 years behind, maybe 50 years behind that. We need to have that yesterday, a long yesterday, and but I must come down hard on you now here, Dr. Hines. You're a fantasist now. You're dealing in an imagine. You guys with the thing. Eh? Do you see? You can't get a word in sideways. You can't get a comment in NCN or Chronicle, right? And you, the white people come and holler, hey man, the playing field uneven. And you now talking about a legislative setup that mirrors what the Americans have? Who will let go there? Who will raise a hand and say, I am for that? Who in the government? Huh? Yes, but look, the thing too sweet as it is, don't don't do that to yourself. Manage, as I like to say, and this is serious stuff, I apologize for that, manage your expectations. I got to be a pessimist and a cynic on this one, because I frankly, as much as I see it being beneficial to Guyana, being a grand positive, that ain't happening for now. I gone long gone before now. And do you so wonderful as it is, promising as it would be for Guyana, I I don't see that happening. Look at something. Look at something. It might be irrelevance, but I think it's got some meaning here. The word is that the private sector commission could assist, and I think it's a stronger word than assist, in identifying civil society people for the to sit on the extractive industry setup. Eh? Who is the private sector in this country? Please help me out here. So when you go there and say, well, we have devolved and we have divested that duty into a component of civil private of Guyana, which is a vibrant and vital component, which is the private sector, to go now and get civil, what kind of civil society people you get? Like where you got at the NRF, like you got at the ERC, like you got at the Integrity Commission. Come on, let's get real here. Let us get real here, folks. This I mean, Dr. Hines, I'm sorry. I want it. I think I want it as much as you, but me and see that happening.
GHK, I have to agree with you. I have to agree with you. And that's one of the big problems of our country.
Yeah.
Is that you can't dream, as Dr. King would say.
We stick where we there and we like where we there.
Exactly. Let me ask you this. I may have missed, but I'm sure you wrote on it. I was trying to today. I was preparing for the program. This argument that Mr. Mohammed is now the new opposition leader, and that he should have the right to nominate 3 new members to the Elections Commission. And over the last week or so, there has been the added argument that he should also have the opportunity to propose a new chairman of the commission. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, he's gotten 109,000 votes. But you pointed out earlier that 77,000 people vote for the APNU. I am saying that 3, yes, he should have the opportunity to nominate commissioner, but it can be 3. It cannot be 3, sir. I think commensurate with his number, it could be 2 maximum. I think a 1.5, right? So it gotta be 2. And the APNU, the other one, right? I think that in terms of the commissioner, the chair, I'm sorry, because you're talking now of a group of 2 groups, 109,000, 77,000, and we must not forget Miss Amanzo Walton Desir,
right?
Whom I have a lot of regard for, right? She has a seat. So I am saying the 3 of them needs to put their heads together and say, well, who you got for chair? This is who I got. And they arrive at some sort of process through which there will be agreement for the identification and nomination of a chair. It can't be one body saying this, that, and say the people with R9. So I am saying that for 2 things you asked, 2 seats, 1 seat. Unfortunately, they're not fractions of a seat. And all 3 groups that have seats in the parliament, they should be able, Mr. Norton, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Mohammed, Ms. Walton Desir, and yourself included, because you in the thing too, be able to say, all right, we think that so-and-so And you get a list of names, and you go through them and you short list, and you argue and you disagree, and come back and you start over, and you whittle it down to one and say, we agree here, everybody on the same page, this is the name we putting up. This is the name we putting up for chair. And that's
And,
where
and you're on point there, because I think that is the procedure that is enshrined in the Constitution. That
okay.
is that for the chair, the leader of the opposition has to consult with other parliamentary opposition parties in arriving at the three. Guyana should know, for example, that Do Not Sing, eminent lawyer, became chairman of the commission, and he was suggested to the then opposition leader Desmond Hoyt by the WPA. And he was the lone Indian in the list that was given to Dr. Jagan. And although he was more pro WPA than pro PPP, Dr. Jagan chose the lone Indian on the list. So in effect, it was the WPA's nominee that became the chairman of the commission. So I'm just giving that explanation to say you are on point. The opposition leader would have to consult with Forward Guyana Movement and APNU in arriving at nominees to send to the president for chairman of the commission.
Well, I think you can repeat history given that past success. You like the one, eh?
I love that.
Sneaky.
I love that. Let me ask you. Let me ask you this question. Have you heard Minister Vikram Bharat's comments?
Yes, I did.
Talk to me. Here,
the failed model?
Yes. Here is a party. First, when the thing come out, as you remember, they said it can't work. Then they said it could work. And then they actually gave a cash transfer. And they boast about it. And they said they will give a bigger one. And they will give more. And then the elections are over. And the minister says, and I haven't heard his government rebuke him. The minister says this model can't work. That it would make people don't want to work. It would make young people don't want to go to school. And it would lead to impoverishment in the country. Talk to me, GHK.
All right. Let me walk this back. How much time we got? On New Year's Day, the president said, and there'll be more cash grants. That was the message. There'll be more cash grants. At Babu Jan, the vice president said, there will be more cash grants. At Kitty, the Honorable Prime Minister, Mark Phillips, said at the launch in Kitty, the PPP launch, he said, we give cash grant before, and we are going to continue with that. I say, well, you're there on a roll here, my brothers. All three of them say. And I have said this. Look how we're going to put these things together. Low voter turnout. People stay home because they entrust politicians to keep their promises. Their promises. Lots of promises were made during the elections, prior to the elections in the campaign trail. One group win. That group got a hold faster than promises it make. So people are watching. Not so much they want a cash grant, and they want one this year. Here it is now, less than a month, September 30th. The Isle Minister, junior Isle Minister, come out and say, well, I don't think this thing is thing. Now, let me say this to you. He say in the US, and you know about US and I know about US.
Oh, yeah, lie.
How he got down the road there? The US, the thing is not a national institution. Yes, the US is the leading, has recaptured the title of leading oil producer exporter in the world, right? Good. We agree on that one. But oil is a private enterprise business. The people pay their tax, They pay the windfall tax when such applies, and they pay the royalty if those are right. Good. The government business done there. They got to collect their piece of the thing. So you telling me, but in the US they don't do this? That's one. You say about Qatar and and UAE. Those people are one man shows. They want the money for look after the family. They ain't got time, they look after the people and say this is what the policy can be for you one thing. So you don't have to deal with cash grants because those people are operating at a level. No, you're telling me about fail model. You didn't know about fail model when you make them promises? Are you walking back those promises 4 weeks after the ill people went to polls? Right? And that's my thing here. Is it because you realize that oil prices are under pressure now and it can cost you? Well, you did borrow money before. Oh, that part there about people who want to go to work, people who want to study. What about the people who know poor? Who know poor, Dr. Hines? You know what I mean by know poor? They kind of live with poor. And they get a stake with a cash grant, whatever farm it take, monthly, quarterly. Who you think they going to the rum shop? You think they going to the jewelry shop? Man, they been so bad. They don't want to stay bad and they want to go back to being bad in the bad situation. So I am saying there is a set of people, housewives, maybe the young people not, but housewives, single mothers, parents who got to do 2, 3 jobs, and they get that. And the vice president himself said, well, we will create an investment mechanism so you're going to get a guaranteed return. Don't hold me to guaranteed, but you're going to get a stated return. But hear this one. So Guyanese get 100, 200,000, 300, whatever that they denounced before when Clive Thomas put out. I think that they are sensible enough. They've been long enough with hard times, hard war season, that a cash grant or cash grants on a structured basis will be put to good use. You're going to get the outliers, the squandermanias and maniacs and whoever else. But you are going to get a set of people say, me want to go back there. Me want no poor no more. Right? Because poor ain't good, poor ain't nice. And that is where I think that the minister has got it wrong. And the minister come up with this spiel here, so which tells me so they put he for do the dirty job because something they got with the cash grant that they want for hold back and shaft Guyanese people.
Hold back and shaft Guyanese people. I mean, it's so shameful. Just a couple of weeks. And although the United States federal government does not give cash transfer, cash transfer from oil is being given in Alaska. It's paid annually.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it comes from what they call the permanent fund dividend.
So
And yes.
You finish
Yes.
first.
No, and every year this money is paid out to residents of Alaska. They get from about 1,000 to 3,000 US dollars, depending on how much they pull in from oil.
Mhm.
So clearly, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. Go ahead.
And the United States, as you know, also have a comprehensive safety net.
Yes.
I mean, we can't ignore that, right? We cannot ignore that. They have a program involving what we call welfare recipients, right? Or distressed people. You got a child born disabled with a issue, and the government steps in. The government steps in. You have unemployment insurance that can be extended. You've got disability insurance that helps people to manage, right? And you don't have to wait for some, you have a process. But I'm saying there is a safety net there. You got people who get a livable wage. I mean, when you got these components that underlie your day-to-day existence, then the government doesn't have to talk about cash grants. What are we talking about in this country? Cost of living, livable wage. $94,000 minimum wage for public servants, $60,000 for private sector. How do those people live, sir? $41,000 for pensioners. They're going to walk back to it. How do those people live when that's their sole source of income? So I'm thinking That's whatever is stirring in the PPP government said, look, that it needs to be honest with the people, and I think it needs to honor those promises made. And cash grant was one of them. Not once, not by one body, but by very, very senior men, and more than once.
More than once. JFK, you wanted to talk about, we've been seeing some stuff in the news with Guyanese who have been doing well in the United States and other parts of the world. And we have had a long history in our country of that kind of performance by our people. Um, and you wanted to talk a little bit about that. Of course, there's some bad things that Guyanese have been in the news for, but go right ahead.
Well, you and I can speak to that, and many people who are listening to this program. We have made our contributions to the United States. The United States has been good to us economically. We have grown in education and so on. I have my parents buried in the United States. I have my wife in cremated in the United States. So there are those roots there. And the United and Guyanese have done well. Quarantine, Morawana, Linden, Buxton, you yourself, East Bank, East Coast. So there's that. But I'm looking at the United States today, and I'm looking at this fellow Ian Roberts. Believe it or not, I know people. One of my children, God's parent, got to school with E, right? So this is how small this world is here. You find out about hunting rifle, and it was loaded in the back seat, and then you find out about student visa, and the man was an Olympic representative at the Sydney Olympics. And then now today, I was about to write about that because I'm not happy. There were some necessary changes needed to be made with the immigration system in the United States, especially with those millions of people at the border, which I think the Democrats erred fatally. Now, I was about to write that about Guyanese not doing so well, especially with the young fella, Sanjay in Brooklyn, who got shot and killed, that 13-year-old. The Sanjay is from Guyanese parents, right? And he was the guy with the bow tie, very spiffily dressed. I forgot the last name now. And I was saying, wait, we get good news about Guyanese cancer survivor and this award, and you got these two situations here now. And I was about to write on that, and then some other thing knocked that out, and I said later. And then I don't like where the United States is, Dr. Hines, in terms of migrants. And as a migrant who have made my contribution for 30 plus years, I don't want to hear about returning to the United States, not the one that is there, where you have men with helmets and machine guns and armored vests. And I mean, this is not the America I know that I love, you know. And so the immigrant now is living in a state of fear. Whether you're a US citizen, the moment you look different, you speak different, you sound different, that is, and this is the America that that has become. And I think there's a lot of racism here and demagoguery, and it's not a good thing for people like us. And I know you're back here. I think full time. I don't know if that still holds. I am here, and you know, the roots are still there, and my children have roots there. So, but it's not. We have Guyana here, and we have America there. Guyana, we shouldn't be talking about the things we are talking about on this program, sir. My fellow Guyanese, we should be talking about each one of us having a fair and rightful share in this patrimony that is our inheritance. Why do we have to? We should be talking about how do we go to higher ground? The same thing you talked about, a different kind of legislative process, an independent legislative system that is separate from the executive. however we arrive there. We can't even get going with a constitutional reform commission that everybody says that we need. Bornum Constitution get cussed. And how we do since the government went into power was tweak it here and there. And we still dealing with constitutional reform commission and making no damn progress. So look, these are the things that stand before us. This place could be a real showcase of what a country could be, what a multi ethnic society could be, what a society that was divided before can be. But we got to be honest with ourselves, Dr. Hines. We call you a racist. They call me, if you are a racist, I am a racist. That's the end of the story for me. Hear the story. Hear this thing. Unless we are willing to roll back the pages and the years and look at the Indian fear, the African insecurity, the indigenous unhappiness, and we look at that and the Chinese and the Portuguese, then we are not going anywhere. We'll always find succor and solace in throwing a dart at David Hines and whoever else stand up because it works. We need to do something like a version of what South Africa did, truth and reconciliation. As UC Kwayana said, there are no innocents. We start from there. In Rwanda, they had what they call it, under the tree, with the elders under that tree.
Yes.
Vakaka, yes, I forget it now. Vakaka, yeah. Let us begin that instead of sniping away at one another. Let us be honest with ourselves, have a clean vision of what this country could be, and make the first step working towards it, or else you'll be forever bogged down in this thing where you is a racist, that one is anti-PPP, that one is anti-white, that one is anti-Exxon, and sometimes that one is all those things are in between, which might be me. And where are we going? What are we doing? Perpetuating a kleptocracy, a plutocracy, a, 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 a legacy where you got father to son, father to daughter, and that's the composition of what we've got right now, in as you call it, elites, right? I'm trying not to be harsh on the government here, but we are talking about the past and the expectation of the future. We haven't gone to the record yet. I said it's do 100 years, 100 days, and I've been keeping to that. But look, we could be contributors. I want nothing, and I don't think you want anything. We want what's better for the Guyanese people. At this stage of our life, what can you give me, right? So, immigrate. Why are our people? Why are Indo-Guyanese? Let's face this fact: majority Indo-Guyanese still migrating from this oil-rich country that makes the news when you have a PPP government in place. Why? A couple of weeks ago, I had a family of four left. Before that, Indians. I got very few friends here because all of them are overseas. I before that, and so this there were others before, and there are others who come to me and said, "What should I do?" I said, "Look, if there's no place here for you, and because of who you are, there's no place for you, and you get an opportunity, you go." I'm saying it here publicly. And that's a bad place for any Guyanese to be. Because on the one hand, we hear about all these things happening, but who are the beneficiaries? Who's left out? How do you deal with it? Talk about one Guyana and you've got an Ipadaji. How? How do you get there? How do you treat a Vincent Alexander, a man who I've spoke to for 30 seconds when you invited me to speak in Buxton? How do you tell me that he's a cheat or whatever, and then you stop a subvention and you don't come up with a rationale as to why it's still being withheld? And Olive Sampson, who I know and I've come to respect because I've shared platforms with her, I mean, these people are like you fighting for what I think is righteous for their constituency. and are being treated like dogs. It is not should be. I mean, if we're going to talk about social cohesion and unity and harmony and one Guyana, then words are cheap. Let us live it. We live it by the decisions we make. I come here. I don't come here to trounce the PPP. I don't come here to please you or to please the audience or to give the trolls fodder. I come here to say we are honest Guyanese. I make that assumption. We want what is good for this country. And therefore, by God, I will stand up for it and fight for it. And if I've got to die for it, then so be it. Here's the story. This country could be better. It's got all the resources in the world. We even got a climate in its favor despite the heat. We don't get hurricanes and volcanoes and whatever else. So, can we look within ourselves and find it to respect each other and be honest with each other that we get that Guyana that we all dream of? Like Martin, I like to dream. Like you, I like to dream. And I think I've spoken too much and we've gone over time.
Well, thank you, my brother. And if there is not there are not any further remarks you would like to make, we may close out. But the opportunity for you to give your closing thoughts.
I thank you for inviting me here. I am glad to share with you, my fellow citizens. Just to repeat very, very briefly what I said ago, we cannot continue like before. Change was promised. It was acknowledged that the voters voted, some voters voted with their feet. Let's respect those people for the choice they make, whether we agree with them or not. And let us use the power in our hands, our seats, our presences in Parliament, the power of the executive, to really capitalize and maximize on what is before us: oil, gold, timber, bauxite, whatever. And so that it comes about with inclusivity that is genuine, not what is bought, not always what is good for the show, and for reciprocal respect. If not, we'll be having the same conversations over and over. With that, I say good night and God bless you all.
And good night to you, and thanks again for coming on and help us to make sense of our country, make sense of ourselves. Good night.
Good night.
And to you, the audience, always, 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 your loyalty is um, beyond anything anything more than we can ask for. We continue to fight. We continue to dream. We continue to hope. We are all we have. I'm going to be back tomorrow night, same time, same place, for another edition of Politics 101. Please make sure that you spread the word that Politics 101 is back.